We are live with Sara Blenkhorn today. She is CEO and founder at the Leverage Lab. But before we start, real quick, maybe I should have started with that. I'm trying some ads, guys. My company is called podbuyer.com. We help you scale and start a podcast for insights, for connections, and even for leads/clients. So I'm excited to help you start and scale your pod. Sara has an interesting background. We last spoke, I think it was a week or two ago. She's in BC. She's about sustainability. She's a certified B Corp consultant plus facilitator. So both her and I care about this environment. We started this convo today talking about regenerative forestry or like replanting trees in a good way for the environment. So I'm really eager to learn more about Sara and sustainability here. So Sara, can you briefly introduce yourself and tell us a bit more about the Leverage Lab?
All right. Thanks, Charles. Thanks for that beautiful introduction. And for anyone tuning in, nice to meet you.
Yes.
Yeah, my name is Sara Blenkhorn. I am founder of the Leverage Lab, and we work at the intersection of sustainability and business, and essentially help companies get B Corp certified. And if you don't know what that means, it's a seal of approval given by an organization called B Lab. And you need to run through a bunch of different points, and you need an 80 to pass. So there's a really fun gamification aspect of it, but we're looking at things like your carbon footprint, carbon goals, how you're doing towards your goals. Same thing with waste, water. A lot of the B Corp stuff is policies and procedures. So a lot of the work that I do is really baking sustainability and regenerative design into the DNA of the company. And
interesting. Why would a company get B Corp certified, for example? Is it just for the branding, or is it because there's an ROI to it? What are you seeing nowadays?
Yeah, there are many reasons. That's a really good question. I think there is an ROI in cost savings. So cost savings from efficiencies. So if you think about doing your lighting or your waste or your water more efficiently, you're going to see cost savings almost immediately. There's also, like you mentioned, brand recognition. So a lot of companies who are consumer-based really want that B Corp logo to differentiate themselves from the greenwashers. So that logo is a seal of approval for both consumers looking at their product on the shelves, but also for internal employees. We're finding that one of the main reasons that companies want to get B Corp certified and continue to do it is that they're seeing recruitment of top talent and retention rates are increasing. So employees that share their values are gravitating towards companies that are B Corp certified. And then another reason is a lot of companies who are looking for investments are being looked at through this lens of ESG, environmental social governance. And B Corp is a really great way to have an ESG plan. So companies who are looking for funding, doing funding rounds, are often being asked by their potential funders, what is your ESG plan? And those who can say we are B Corp or we're headed towards B Corp have a lead against those who don't have a plan.
Why do companies come up with ESG plans, and what would an ESG plan look like for a publicly listed company?
So Larry Fink, maybe he's the leader of BlackRock Labs, one of the biggest investment firms around the globe, and he coined the term ESG probably 6 or 7 years ago. And I mean it's been really phenomenal for the investment landscape because it's given folks a lens for which to look at potential investment companies, basically saying, we're not going to invest in you and your company unless we know that you have a plan for the future. And but that being said, the lens of ESG has been vague. I know over the years it's starting to get more meat behind the bones, and there are different things that could slot in. And the world of sustainability can be tricky because there are many words that mean similar things. There's ESG, there's regenerative, there's sustainable, there's corporate social responsibility, which sometimes is called CSR. And I think it's easy to get lost in the leaves of the acronym soup. But what I really love about B Corp is it backs up, something like an ESG plan with a certification body that really says, this is the seal of approval. You have to go through these hoops. You have a third-party recognition. So I don't know if that answers your question, but ESG I find it can be a more of a vague term, whereas B Corp certification is a seal of approval and it's third-party verified.
I think there's great ROI to ESG because humans are still motivated by capital. I still have a hard time to imagine how very testosterone-driven humans could be interested in making good for the environment. So I think most companies, they still do it just because having that seal and that branding, if you want, of being cool and being actual and following the trends gives them some kind of ROI. Am I wrong in thinking that?
No, you're not wrong. I think, companies do it not always for the ROI. Some folks come at it for the right reasons and then are pleasantly surprised that there is ROI. But the good news is that the ROI is going to continue to increase as these global challenges such as climate change become more and more pressing and have real consequences for many businesses.
Maybe we should have started with that because I spoke with a guy today and he said that he just came back from, I believe it was like Ahit, or I'll find the precise city name, but it's near Lake Chapala where you grew up. Ahihik, yeah. And that reminded me of you, and I said like, Sarah, she grew up on that lake and she saw it. It began I picture it as like green stinky water and then going all clean in some time, and I was quite surprised by that because that lake is gigantic, but basically you witness the change of the lake going from polluted and not healthy to something more healthy, and that shaped you sort of in who you are today and really process sustainability and so forth. Tell us about that background of yours.
Yeah, for sure. I guess the big piece I want to pull out is like what I saw and learned was that we can revitalize these natural systems, but what the key to it is collaboration. And so when I was 16, my folks picked up and moved like the Brady Bunch from rural Nova Scotia to Ajijic, Mexico, to this lake called Lago de Chapala. And it was like a puddle when we pulled up, very, very, very dried up, and the water that was there was quite polluted. But this international organization came in called the Living Lakes Society, and they looked at the lake like a system. And I think a lot of our global problems need to be attacked that way because it's all interconnected. And so what they did is they looked at all the stakeholders that were affected by the lake's demise and would be impacted if the lake were to come back to life. And they brought them together into a room and said, what is your impact? What does this look like? And they started to understand where the water was being pulled from. So they had and started to make a plan together. And this is the collaboration piece. So upstream, the main tertiary river inlet to Lago de Chapala is called the Lerma River. And so they noticed that a lot of the farmers upstream were doing extractive flood irrigation practices, which are very ancient. And so they helped them to switch to drip irrigation, in a lot of cases that required changing their crops from water intensive things like strawberries to more water effective crops like chickpeas, and upgraded the water treatment plant going into Guadalajara so that there weren't any leaks. And they worked with fishermen and the surrounding constituents to reduce litter and get garbage into bins. And because they were able to look at the lake as a system and attack it from many different angles, they were able to really revive the lake. And just a couple years later, the lake completely came back to its fullest, and it has been super full and a really big attraction, even from folks going to Guadalajara to go and visit. So it's brought in a lot of tourist money to the area. Expats now go there to reside and retire. And so the revival of the lake has been a really amazing thing.
What about your traveling throughout the globe? I see Tanzania here. That must have pretty much changed your mindset. I see Stockholm. What insights have you got from traveling from country to country and observing their sustainability and social practices?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, from my experience with Lake Chapala, really understood, we have the tools, the technology to solve some of these wicked problems, if you will, but we really need to have ample leadership and the ability to collaborate. And I think that those are the pieces that I'm not, I would love to see more examples of. And a lot of the work that I do facilitates helping people to work together and look at what it looks like to collaborate. Working in Tanzania was mind-blowing. I went with CETA, the Canadian International Development Agency, and we were doing grants. So we were giving out grants to business owners in need, and we were able to switch that program to one of loans. And what happens when you switch from grants to loans is you tell people you believe in them and their ability to make the money back. And so that was a big learning. I fell in love with Mohammed Yunus and his book Banker to the Poor, and his ability to really help empower folks in more developing countries to build their own livelihood and give them tools. Sweden, I was in Sweden. I did my master's degree, a master's of science of sustainability. And that's really where I learned this framework that I use in a lot of my work. It's really looking at system boundaries and where humans and society crash into those system boundaries, and what it means to build a strategy as an entity or a plan as an entity to live and thrive inside of those system boundaries. I did learn a lot about Europe while living in Sweden, and the progressiveness of the laws and regulations there. It's a really great example of how top-down regulation can change a whole ecosystem for companies and individuals and residents. And I think, that happens because of the mere landmass. There are a big population on a small amount of land, and there is no place such as a way. So they're really confronted with where things go. And, it's quite different. And therefore, I think a lot slower in Canada, where I live, because we've got oodles of land and it's easy to throw things away. The leadership and the policies aren't quite here yet. I hope "yet" is the key word in that sentence.
Isn't that weird though? But I mean, with Harper, it's not weird because conservatives, and he was promoting the tar sands for the economy. And I can understand the guy, when you're seeing people struggle to get an income, you want people to be well off first and have their financial needs taken care of first before you can talk about the environment. But Trudeau seems more aware of, or socially aware with these causes. He's like a supporter of LGBT rights and so forth. What do you think about Trudeau and the future of the government of Canada in regards to the environment and the policies they'll put forward?
That's a tough question, Charles. There are many different issues, where I see leadership being quite progressive. And then there are other issues where I wonder what decade we're in. And so I don't know that I have like a blanket statement around whether we're in good hands or not. I think it's really important to vote locally and figure out who your local leaders are and start close. And let your local leaders know what the issues are that concern you, so that we can have that impact. A lot of people I find more concerning, definitely the right leadership, but more concerning is this like mass sweepment of apathy. So I think there's so many different challenges that we're facing. It's easy to get complacent and to fall into apathy. But we, back to that collaboration piece, together we are a voice, and we are very fortunate to have democracy here in Canada. And I think it's really important to make sure that your voice counts, not only in letting your leaders know what issues are important to you, but also, when you go to the stores and you vote with your dollar and you vote with your job, it's important to understand that those are all choices, and cumulatively we're making statements as we do those things together, both in the political realm, but in also in the way that we're choosing to consume.
Right. I think, instead of relying on governments, like people should just make things move by their own, a bit like you're doing. You're aiming at big companies as well, like Starbucks, how many cups of paper coffee do they serve on a daily basis? Me, a flagrant example is Amazon, all these boxes that come to my door and these plastic bubbles. I'm like, first, do I need these boxes? I understand there's some economic reasons why they do it. They don't want to get my stuff stolen, and it's protective towards that stuff. But I talked to a lady on my pod not so long ago. Her business is about sustainable packaging that you can use over and over and over again. There's even smart technology in there you can track, and that's just genius. There's maintenance in there. It's a good business model too. So how can we make these giants move and modify their practices?
Yeah, I mean, at the very essence, vote with your dollar. Let them know you're not, you're not going to support their products if they're going to keep sending them in packages. Like, they're not going to know unless we don't tell them. They'll definitely notice if many folks don't support them and their shares go down. So I think you really have to vote with your dollar and voice your concerns. Ask for something different. I think a lot of potential B Corps come to me and say, folks have been asking for this. This is why, and they listen. They want to listen. Your voice matters to them. They're listening.
Because my theory is that, dollar before everything. So capitalism is quite important, that people get paid. And just like in any industry, if you're aiming towards consumer, you need to let them feel the magic. And Amazon is that, or a Rappi when I order food and there's way too many boxes again. That is magic right there for the consumer. So my thinking is like, how can I start a B2B company that will make it feel like magic to Amazon, to Rappi, so that it's like, oh, this is magic. Oh, so first you fix the environment, but now I have to pay less to use your product. Plus I can track my stuff. And I had the idea to, even with that technology, to track bacteria, for example, in Rappi, because their bags, they get lots of food in there. And if it's contaminated and the consumer eats the final product, then with bacteria, they might get sick and they might be unhappy. So I guess it's like suggesting them a solution. And usually magic is created with VC money because it costs a lot to create magic. But that's what I'm thinking of on my side to potentially fix that problem. What do you think about that?
No, I think that's great. I do think I think a lot of the challenges that we're facing with these new tech companies that are bringing things to us is an imagination problem. And then also, I think we have it depends on where, but there's a red tape issue, right? So a lot, I know in Canada, there's an issue with reusable containers around, bacteria contamination. Who's going to wash the thing? When does it get returned? How do you ensure cleanliness? And I know that that's possible. And like you said, there are businesses in that return loop that could pop up and be viable in those systems. Maybe just a dishwashing facility, for example, and VC money could back that. But I think there's a lack of imagination and ability to collaborate around these new technologies. And it's so much easier right now in the environment where we have a throwaway culture. It doesn't cost the company anything to, put all this waste into the hands of their consumer and have their consumer throw it away, compost it. A lot of the new age way of fixing that challenge is to do compostable packaging. And that's quite troublesome because depending on where, most compostable packaging requires really high heat facilities, and most waste treatment plant, if it gets into the right receptacle and goes to the right place, don't have that technology, and certainly not your backyard compostable facilities. So it often ends up in the garbage anyway.
Right. What about reusable plates, utensils? I'm not sure how you say that word in English. You start it in French. And a bag, a box that every time that the delivery guy comes here, I trade it with him. Yeah. What I would get as a consumer, they would have me save money, right? So be part of that and save 2.5% on your order. The restaurants wouldn't have to spend on box. And basically, if the guy that delivers them, you could also potentially get a cut. And I would do some light advertising on these utensils, so and on the boxes too. I wouldn't have like a full OLED display because that would cost quite a lot, but just light advertising so that it's like win, 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 win all over the place. But that's so hard to implement, right, throughout the chain. So you really, yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, we did that with the milk. We did that with the milkman,
right,
back in the day, and that was pretty prevalent. And
milk tasted really well. Better because of it.
And now we have QR codes, so you could track them. We'd have way more efficiency rates. So I think we can do that. Same thing with rail. We had rail before the vehicle, and we were traveling together, and it was way more efficient. Some of these systems I think that we had before, we might want to go back, and I'm not suggesting we need to go back in time. I think we add the technology, the QR codes, the ability to have fast light rail. I think we have methodologies. Can we collaborate and think about it from a systemic and a planning view that takes into account ecosystems externalities? I don't know.
Huge opportunity. I'm going to have more of these folks on my pod, but yeah, that company that I had, Lime Loop, I was so bullish on the system, and not just for the environment, for the economics of it. I mean, it's a cash generating machine because the businesses, they pay on a monthly basis for these bags. So imagine like $5 per bag per month. You got 1,000, that's $5K per month for one business. Super glad to have had you on, Sara. Where can people find out more about you?
Yeah, but reach out on my website. It's www.theleveragelab.com, and there's a contact me. I'd love to connect.
Please. All right, and thank you so much again. Podpire.com if you want to start or scale your podcast, get insights, guests, and potential